Hello, Radio 2, and welcome back. So we have been looking at programming and content in the last couple of lessons, and more specifically, we've been looking at prepping. So in the previous lesson, we looked at making a prep sheet, and then from there, we looked at making a show runner, so show runner templates, why it's important, what you need to add in there. And then from there, so for links specifically, so we've been looking at links, how to make a link, what is needed for a link, etc. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to a feature. Okay, so for today specifically, we'll be looking at features, also known as benchmarks. So if you think about a feature, what do you think it means? What stands out for you about a feature? But when have you heard features? A feature can be broadly described as a content piece that happens at the same time on a daily or a weekly basis. So features have two main purposes. The first, to create a mini brand within a show that can be easily recognized and with which audiences become familiar. So think about the features that you like listening to. And then the second main purpose is to create a tune-in moment in which listeners add the feature to their list of daily appointments. This created a pattern of repeated listening or repeat listening, which drives time spent listening and ratings. So time spent listening, TSL, it's how long we spend listening to the radio at a specific time, okay? Which is very important for our RAM figures, so a radio audience measure. So features two main purposes. Firstly, to create a mini brand, so it's easily recognized. It's something that you know. If you hear it, you know exactly which station, which show you're listening to. And secondly, it creates a tune-in moment because you will make sure to add that specific moment to your day if it's something that you love listening to. So features are, metaphorically speaking, casings or containers for strong, relatable, character-based and entertaining content. Listeners want to be entertained, and the feature, if entertaining, will create this mini brand that we just spoke about and will get listeners coming back daily to consume content. So Tracy Johnson, once again, details the following attributes of a successful feature. So according to Tracy Johnson, if a feature will be successful if it has the following. It needs to be fun to do and fun to listen to. So the presenter needs to have fun in studio and you need to have fun while listening to it. It needs to have longevity and be sustainable. Ensure that you have enough ideas to draw from. Otherwise, listeners won't come back. Don't launch a completely new feature unless you are confident it will stay popular over time. So don't try to bring in a new feature and then it only works for 3 months and then it bombs, okay? And then you need to bring in another new feature. Make sure it's sustainable. It needs to be a good fit for the presenter or the team. The execution of the feature must be unique to the presenter, okay? No one must be able to do it like you do it. It shouldn't be a generic feature that everyone can pull off. It needs to be something that works for you. And then there needs to be a demand for the feature, which means that the feature should be good enough to be able to be on air every day at the same time. So listeners know when to tune in, okay? So it needs to be a good feature. It needs to be in demand. If the feature can fulfill all these criteria, so again, it needs to be fun to do and to listen to, it needs to have longevity and be sustainable, it needs to be a good fit for the presenter or team, and there needs to be a demand for the feature, then the feature is probably going to work for a show. Look for a game or informational or funny content pieces that are based largely in storytelling. There are many well-known features that fall within these categories and that can be used by shows and presenters to entertain listeners and to keep them coming back. For this reason, it's also important that they are scheduled regularly, okay? Listeners might tune in to hear the feature, and if the feature is late or it has been moved to another time slot, they may be disappointed and they might not tune in again, okay? Take note of having too many features within a show. Too many features that are broadcast at the same time on a daily or a weekly basis may become predictable and dull. Okay? Original content gives your show the elements of drama and surprise. Top-rated shows have a balance of consistency and unpredictability. Okay? So you're consistent, but you also have a bit of unpredictability. To ensure that a show has this balance of consistency and unpredictability, we're going to look at a checklist of questions to help spark creativity within this respect. When we look at the checklist of questions to help spark their creativity, the first one there would be check the preparation sheets from the previous day. There could, for example, be good callers that can be used to create content. So you might have had a brilliant caller on the previous day who only spoke for like 20 seconds, and it might be someone that you can add, that you can put on again and perhaps do a little bit more with on air. Second one there, compile a mind map of the audience. Note what is topical. So what topics is it that people want to talk about at the moment? What is relevant? What is local to the listener? Is there something that the listeners are talking about? Such as relationship dramas between celebrities in the entertainment, sport and the business world? Is there something happening? Thirdly, find out what is going on in the lives of the cast of your show. Personal stories that will relate to listeners could work well. This could include being vulnerable and about something going on in their lives, or something such as regrets or failures, something big that might be happening for them at the moment. And then lastly, create a clash of content by putting a character in a situation where they don't belong and then exaggerate the situation for comedic effect. Okay, we've spoken about this previously as well, and I'm sure we're going to speak about this again in the future coming up. So an example here would then be a character with a fear of heights that goes ziplining. You can just imagine how afraid that person must be. Use this story to include the listener and to create a story arc that can act as a short-term feature. Use the story to include the listener and to create a story arc that can act as a short-term feature. When it comes to features, you get different kinds of features, okay? Quite a few different kinds of features. There are multiple opportunities for interesting stories to be told in these features. So some of these that you can do would be things like the setting up and resolving conflict that we've spoken about, addressing or creating dilemmas, resolving something with an interactive topic, go on a quest or a mission, write a comedy sketch, create a top 5 list on a topical story, introduce a new interactive game, include audio in most of your content segments. We've also mentioned that before. Book a guest who's relevant to the audience or the show. Book an expert to shed light on an issue. So personality expert. There are quite a few weekly segments who have specific personality experts on their shows. And then lastly, create a viral video. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play you a couple of feature examples. You'll hear them sounds more like a podcast or a talk radio segment. The idea is to get you to listen to these different types of segments and to see if you can come up with a couple of these topics on your own, okay? Because you should be able to come up with quite a few features. So the first one is a new generation of app developers.
From NPR News, it's All Things Considered. I'm Guy Ross, and it's time now for All Tech Considered. While some teens and tweens spent the summer babysitting or mowing lawns, a growing number spent long hours in front of a screen with their parents' blessing. From Hoover, Alabama, Gigi Duban reports on a new high-tech phenomenon, very young mobile app developers.
One night this past summer, Ozair Patel and his parents were sitting around the dinner table. They were talking about the new school year and how Ozair could be more organized. Now, Ozair is a bright kid, but like a lot of 13-year-olds, he loses things, handouts, notices, things like that. So by the first week of school, he'd built himself an iPhone app. He called it Barry Schoolmate, after his school, Barry Middle.
It has the school's calendar on it, so you can find what days you have school off and you can email your teachers from your iPod, your iPhone.
Word spread about the app, and Ozair became a middle school rock star. In the hallways, kids patted him on the back. They gave him high fives. Most of them wanted to know how he did it, so they could build mobile apps too. In fact, the school district's chief technology officer was so impressed, he asked Ozair to make apps for other schools. You agreed?
Yeah, I did.
Are they going to pay you?
A lot. I don't know if it's a lot, but they're going to pay me.
A school system spokesman said they haven't yet nailed down how much he'll be paid, but they'll be sure to follow all child labor laws. Ozair is okay with this odd little arrangement.
So I'm working 2 jobs, being a student and working with them.
Isn't that kind of bizarre?
Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I'm getting paid, so.
Ozair is part of a growing trend of kids turned entrepreneur. For instance, the 8th grader who built Bubble Ball, an app that managed to knock Angry Birds out of the top app slot. It's been downloaded more than 9 million times. Many young developers are hoping to nail the next big hit and make some money. Say you build an app for an iPhone or iPad. You charge 99 cents per download. Then if 1,000 people buy it, that's $700 after Apple's 30% cut. Free apps make money through ads.
I'm T-Pain, you know me. I'm big music, nothing boy. Ooh-wee.
But not all kids do this to get rich. They want to build something fun, like this.
I'll take it home with me. Got money in the bank.
It's a musical app that changes your voice. Stanford professor Ge Wang created it and other popular musical apps. He says more kids are learning to build apps now because, well, they can.
It's really not that hard. All the tools are there, and they don't cost a lot of money.
Wang says platforms like Apple's online app store have made it easier to bring a product to consumers. And he adds, lots of kids thrive on exploring uncharted territory and taking risks, which makes them fearless entrepreneurs.
Overall, the market is absolutely booming at the moment.
Carolina Milanesi analyzes the app industry. Mobile app sales are expected to double next year to $17 million. And Milanesi says tech-savvy kids are poised to move in on those profits.
These devices are used in school. They're part of their everyday life, and it's both play and work for them.
And for all those kids at Berry Middle School who wanted a piece of the action, Ozair started an app club. For NPR News in Hoover, Alabama, I'm Gigi Duban.
Okay, so that was the first feature. And the second one now is fighting childhood obesity. It's a family affair.
With more American children becoming overweight, many parents are wondering how to talk to their children about weight. One program for families in Silicon Valley is both straightforward and successful. Here's Sarah Varney of member station KQED.
It's already been a long day at school and a long day at work for most of these families. Yet here they are, gathered in a Stanford Hospital classroom in Menlo Park at 5:30 in the evening, cheerfully sorting through pizza boxes and canned soup to learn about what's in their food.
Okay, we'll take one more question and then unfortunately we have to end. Yes. What if you have a family member who's picky?
The children here are all in the highest percentile for body mass index, or BMI, and they've signed up with their parents for a 6-month healthy eating and exercise boot camp. After the class, I meet up with Gabriel Rodriguez, an 11-year-old, sparkly-eyed, self-confessed burrito lover, and his mom.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Gabriel graduated from the program a few months ago, and he and his mom, Gloria Artiega, are here tonight for their monthly check-in with their health coach, Thea Runyon.
All right, Gabriel, you know the drill. Take your shoes off.
Gabriel and his mom meet Thea every month to measure his weight and height and talk about how well he's sticking to his exercise and healthy eating goals. The program is designed around a traffic light system. Soda and cookies are reds, other foods are yellows or greens. Reds aren't banned, but kids do set goals for bringing down how many they eat each month. They keep track of what they eat in a journal, the snacks after soccer practice, the pizza at school.
Okay, so let's take a look at your charts. So when you started the program, you were eating 90 red lights.
Yes. The chart shows Gabriel has reduced his red lights from 90 to 30 a month, and he's pretty much stuck with it. Program director Cindy Zedek says kids gradually cut back the amount of junk food they eat, so it doesn't feel like a big change. This isn't a diet, Zedek makes clear, a word that they never use with kids or parents.
You're really signing up for 6 months of learning how to improve your eating and exercise habits for your lifetime. It's not a diet that you're on and then you're off at the end of the 6 months. This will give you the tools to continue to make these changes for your lifetime.
Those changes also include exercise. Kids set goals around playing or doing sports for an hour each day. Often the hardest part for parents, Zedek says, is figuring out how to talk to their kids about weight.
A lot of parents call and say that their child has very high self-esteem, feels very confident, is very active, but they're overweight. So they don't want to bring up their weight because they don't want to make them feel badly about it if it's not a current concern for them.
The last thing a parent wants is to saddle a child with a self-image problem or eating disorder. So instead, Zedek encourages parents to tell their child that the whole family could stand to be healthier, and the program is something they can do together. Thea Runyon, the health coach, says often, though, there are plenty of clues that a child actually wants help. For example, Gabriel asked his mom if he was fat. Other kids complain they can't keep up during soccer or basketball. But Runyon says parents, out of embarrassment or nervousness or their own issues with weight or food, can dismiss the problem.
I think what happens when this issue comes up at home is a parent is quick to say, oh no, nothing's wrong, everything's fine, you're wonderful, I love you, instead of listening and saying, okay, are they actually asking for help?
The program here at Stanford has an enviable success rate. Since 1999, about 80% of the kids who finished have achieved their body weight goals. Although most of the families here were referred by a pediatrician, health insurers won't pay for it. Instead, the costs are largely covered by grants for low-income families, while others pay out of pocket. For Gabriel, he says being with other kids who are overweight and trying to get healthier has kept him going.
It's not like I'm the only person in the world. I know there are other people out there like me.
For tweens and teens who are still growing, the goal is not to shed pounds, but to maintain a healthy weight. Gabriel is closing in on his health goals. His weight is staying about the same, but he's growing taller and clearly growing into himself. For NPR News, I'm Sarah Varney.
Okay, so here you can hear that this was like a 6-month thing that they did. Where would you classify something like this? If you were to say what it is, would it set up and resolve conflict, address or create dilemmas, resolve something with an interactive topic? Did it go on a quest or a mission? This was definitely not a comedy sketch, though. Do you think it was any of those that we spoke about, or do you think these would have fallen into something else? Like if you had to put these in a category, where would you put it? Okay, so there's another 2 that we're going to listen to.
Bullying on social media sites like Facebook gets a lot of news coverage, though most teens actually think social networks are friendly places for them. That's according to a new study released today by Pew Research Center's Internet and American Life Project. As NPR's Laura Seidel reports, most teens still do see a lot of meanness towards other kids online.
If you sit down with some teenagers and ask them if people are mean on Facebook, heads nod.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm talking to a group of 17-year-olds at Pioneer High School in San Jose, California. Shasta Hudson and Samantha Abrahams elaborate on just how mean.
I mean, I think pretty mean. People just, like, they use Facebook as...
they're honest.
Yeah, they're very honest. So they can say stuff that they wouldn't usually say in person because they're, like, behind a computer.
Facebook definitely adds another dimension to the emotional turmoil of teenagehood. Instead of having fights among a few friends or in a solitary corner of the schoolyard, Abraham says teenage drama gets a bigger audience online that bleeds over into the real world.
A couple breaks up, and then everyone's going to go up to the couple and, like, what happened here? Like, whereas if there wasn't Facebook, then, like, people wouldn't really catch on, they wouldn't really know.
Despite all that drama, this group of teens actually think Facebook is a really positive place. It helps them stay in touch with friends and family, says Shasta Hudson.
I have a sister that goes to Azusa Pacific in LA for school, and so she's always away, so I go on her Facebook and check in and look at pictures, see what she's up to, and look at her statuses, and it lets me know what she's doing.
And as much as some kids can be mean on Facebook, it can also be a place where people can be nicer than they are in the real world. Mariah Blackmore is out as a bisexual. One day, a boy started saying mean things about her sexuality on her Facebook page.
Like, everyone was against him, like, what the hell is your problem? And then everyone started standing up for me. I'm like, oh, this is cool.
The experiences of Blackmore and these other teens is pretty standard, according to a new study from Pew Research Center's Internet and American Life Project. Amanda Lenhart is co-author of the study, which surveyed nearly 800 teenagers.
On one hand, we find that actually teens have a pretty good experience on social network sites, that, 70% of them say people are mostly kind in their experience on social network sites.
Although only 8% of teens say they have been the target of online bullying, a very large number say they have seen other people being harassed.
We also hear from the vast majority of teens who use these sites, about 88%, that they see people being mean and cruel to one another in these spaces.
And Lenhart says for those teens who are bullied, it can be traumatic. Lenhart's survey found a few other interesting things about teens and social networks. Close to half of online teens say they have lied about their age in order to access a website or online service. However, 86% of teens say they have discussed what they do online with their parents. Another surprising finding of the survey is that teens do care about privacy. More than half have decided not to post something online because they were concerned it might reflect badly on them in the future. That's true of Mariah Blackmore.
Especially for me, because I'm trying to become a firefighter, and they do background checks, like really heavy background checks.
What does seem clear from this study and this group of teens is that the online social world has added a new layer of drama to a time in life that is already fraught with plenty of anxiety. Laura Seidel, NPR News, San Francisco.
Okay, and the last one I'm going to play for you is just with regards to the shortage of women in Silicon Valley.
Thousands of women are gathering in Portland, Oregon for the Grace Hopper celebration. It is the world's largest technical conference for women in computing, and there's a lot of recruiting going on. High-tech companies are discovering design teams with men and women often create better products. But as NPR's Wendy Kaufman reports, there aren't nearly enough women to meet the demand.
Katie Schmaltzried, a graduate student at Stanford, recalls one of her very first classes at the university, Computer Science 106A.
That was definitely a very good introduction into women in tech. There weren't very many women in the class. I very distinctly remember being the only girl in my section.
It's no secret that beginning in middle school, young women often lose interest in science and math. So it's not surprising that relatively few women sign up for computer courses in college. And when they do, they're often at a huge disadvantage.
I remember the guy on the first day sitting next to me. He was telling me how he had coded up a search engine. And I'm sitting there like, are you kidding me? I've never coded anything. This is like day one introduction.
Katie Schmaltzried was able to catch up, but says by the second semester, fewer than half the original women were still in the course. Nationwide, only about 20% of the bachelor's degrees in computer science go to women. And Mark Bregman, the former chief technology officer at Symantec, says for the industry, it's not nearly enough.
One of the things that's a barrier to our ability to grow is our ability to hire the best talent. If we could get more women to go into computer science, we would have more talent to hire from.
Bregman, who's now a senior executive at a company called Newstar, says there's an acute shortage of computing talent. He not only worries about the small number of women coming in the door, but also about the industry's inability to retain them. They leave their technical jobs far more often than men. Bregman cites empirical and anecdotal evidence that teams with men and women are often more productive and build stuff that's more interesting. Take Symantec's effort to develop software to limit what kids could see and do on the internet.
The initial engineering approach was we will just block the bad stuff. And through some of the internal discussion, it became clear that, well, that's not really going to work because the kids are going to get around it. And so rather than do that, why not create a product which enhances the dialogue between the parents and the children about what is safe behavior on the internet? That's very different than the hard and fast engineering-driven, I'll use the term male approach, which just says no, yes or no.
In an effort to bring in more women, Bregman began requiring hiring managers to interview women for engineering jobs, even if on paper they weren't as strong as the male candidates. And once in the door, the women often demonstrated their worth and got the jobs. Other companies have their own initiatives. Here at Facebook, sun-drenched offices in Silicon Valley, you'll find nursing rooms and premium parking slots for pregnant women. But Jocelyn Goldfein, the director of engineering, says there are far more substantial efforts to hire and retain women.
One of the things Facebook has that I love, I arrived here too late to take advantage of it, is the parental leave. Facebook offers 4 months of paid parental leave, not just to women, but also to men. And because the men are taking it, it's not this abnormal thing that only affects the one person in the team who's a woman.
Over time, that should help women whose careers have often been derailed when they took time off to have kids. But there's something quietly insidious happening in many high-tech companies. Women engineers, more often than men, end up in testing or project management. Those positions usually pay less and carry less status, so moving up the career ladder becomes more difficult. And when women aren't promoted, they are more likely to leave. Wendy Kaufman, NPR News.
Okay, so here we had 4 examples now of informative topics. Okay, the idea is to start getting you to think about features, especially because for your formative assessment, you need to create a feature for me, okay, from scratch. Again, it needs to be emotive. So you need to work with Fabi when working on these features. I'm quickly going to show you 947's website because they actually have a features page, okay, which shows all their features and things that they are talking about. So they have their 947 Ride Joburg, which is coming up on 21 November 2021. So this is quite a long feature. Then we have Huawei Joburg Day, that's back for 28 May. The vaccines with the Clicks experts that they get in and speak about. Get schooled, so 4 kids, 3 questions. So where they get asked questions. Say you love me. So in the afternoon drive with Tando, you can stand a chance to win 1,000 Rand by saying you love me. Then there's this treat your taste buds and become a lifetime member of the club for 59 Rand 99. So that's that feature on Anela and the Club where you buy 2 mango smoothies to enter. And then there's the prank on 947 with Darren Wackett Simpson and Mzizi now, which previously Darren did it with Andy. So this was a regular feature, okay, every single day. Then there's a podcast series with Ayanda MVP. Just because I played you a couple of serious links, I'm going to play you one of the kidspirations. The more you practice, the better you get.
We do it all for our kids. And here's another reason why on Daybreak with Alex Cage.
Every morning our kids can do some kidspirational messaging, some kidspirational motivation, if I can. Some inspiration from the kids. 073 579 3445. If you have a little one, get them to record their name, where they're from, and an inspirational message that'll get the whole of Joburg basically going. And if I'm not mistaken, most of the schools are now officially back today, right? So if your kids are awake right now for tomorrow, we've already got our kidspirational kid for today, but for tomorrow, send me a voice note. 073 579 3445, and you and your little one could be our kidspirational kid for Tuesday, which is going to be tomorrow. Right, you got it? That number again, 073 579 3445.
Good morning. I'm Charlie from Johannesburg, and my advice for you today: the more you practice, the better you get. Have a good day.
Okay, so that was quite a cute one. I always love the features with the little kids because they always sound so sweet on air. Do you remember those? The kids say the darnest things. There were a lot of those that were also features. And there's a lot of games. So a lot of the radio stations put their features on as podcasts, okay? So you should be able to get a lot of the content to go and have a listen to it, to get an idea about more what it is that you would want, how you would like to structure your feature. But in essence, remember, it's something that can happen at the same time, either on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, okay? Needs to have one of 2 purposes, either to create a mini brand within a show that can easily be recognized. If I hear it, I know what's coming up. Or it's a tune-in moment where I get listeners to listen into this specific feature every day or weekly. Like this is part of their appointments, okay? So this is part of their time spent listening. So that is the main purpose of having a feature. So if you want to create a feature, keep these things in mind, okay? And features should have strong, relatable, character-based or entertaining content, okay? Because why? Listeners want to be entertained. And if you can do that, you'll get the listeners coming back. So it needs to be fun to do, fun to listen to. It needs to have longevity and be sustainable. It needs to be a good fit for a presenter or a team. And there needs to be a demand for the feature. You can find a lot of comedy pieces, a lot of pranks, a lot of silly little things that people do to make you laugh on air. So again, for you to focus on, might be good to focus on the following, which you're also going to look at for me for homework. So set up and resolve your conflict, address or create dilemmas, resolve something with an interactive topic, go on a quest or a mission, write a comedy skit or a comedy sketch, create a top 5 list on a topical story, introduce a new interactive game, include audio in most of your content segments, book a guest who's relevant to the audience of the show, book an expert to shed light on an issue. So look for personality experts. And then lastly, create a viral video. So your homework for me would be to use that checklist that I just went through now with you, which is on page 147. For next week, you need to bring me 2 examples. You need to come up with 2 examples of each of those that we can perhaps use as features. This is really good practice for you as well for your feature, which you are focusing on. So by now, what we have covered with chapter 4, with creating content of chapter 4, we've gone through a promise. We've gone through the fact that there are only 2 links, okay? There are only 2 links, a promise and a performance. A promise of something of value that will be coming up, and the performance is making sure to deliver on your promise, okay? And then what did we say about the Mexican bicycle wheel? 1 thought per link, 1 thought per link only. So your obligation, your thought, your obligation fulfilled out of it, okay? So that is what we spoke about when we came to links, and we spoke about the conversations, which is how we want the link to be. And then we spoke about storytelling in the sense of the 5 steps that you need, okay? So the science of stories, the 5 storytelling steps. And those were firstly the hook, secondly the crumbs, thirdly the dress up, the 4th one was the payoff, and lastly the blackout, okay? And those you can work in here as well. Those work very well with your features also. So focus on the 5 of them. And then from there, we started looking at link planning sheets and a link sheet. You have your link planning sheet, then you have your link sheet where you will break down your link, or whether it's your feature or whatever it might be. So you'll put in your promise, your hook, your setup, your payoff, and that brings us to where we are now. So you should have a really good idea about features now, about different types of features that you can bring in, that you can focus on, and you can take a look at how long these features are on the different radio stations for when you're building your feature. So whether it is that you want to do something like a prank, or whether it is that you want to do something like the lockdown overshare, or whether you want to do like a music type of feature, or whether you want to do any other game feature, like the 15-second challenges, or whatever it might be. There are so many of these things, okay? Just keep in mind, if you have all your formatics in place and you remember to use Fubby, then you can come up with amazing features. And that brings me to the end of this lecture. Just before I say goodbye, the next class that we'll be doing will be a live lecture, which will take place on Thursday, the 15th of April, okay? Where we will continue with the second half of our features class. And with that, I say goodbye, and then I'll see you then. Have a good rest of your week. Bye.